stage, and this shows, yeah, or when you're not. But this really shows your commitment to your own success, and I hope you all know the extent to which we're committed to your success, and this event this morning is indicative of that. Not only your faculty and the staff at CJC, but the women who've traveled quite a distance to come here this morning to share their life lessons with you and to tell you how they've come to be so successful. I want to share a little anecdote that I think typifies what the theme is this morning. When I was in your shoes, when I was a student, a journalism major at our college, I was very studious. I was very serious about making good grades, about getting work experience. Whenever I went home to Lake Wales, where I grew up, I worked at the little daily newspaper, every Christmas break, spring break, of course, summer. And I just was determined that I was going to be a newspaper editor. And I did everything I thought you had to do to achieve that goal. So my history of journalism class, I aced all the tests, and when I got my final grade, it was a B. Well, I was stunned because, history of journalism, how hard could that be, right? And I'd done everything the professor had asked me to do. So I charged to his office wanting to know, surely this was a mistake. Why did I get a B? And he was ready for me. He knew I was going to come in, and he said, "You never spoke up in class once. You never raised your hand. You never participated in discussions. And that is just as important as making good grades on the test." And so that was my first lesson in the importance of self-confidence. That if you're going to succeed in the workplace, you have to be self-confident. And if you don't feel self-confident, you have to fake it. You have to force yourself. And so that's really the core message and the core mission of this event today, is to share with you how we all built our self-confidence and how we enhanced our influence in the workplace and in life. What considerations go into that. So over the years and fits and starts, I have found my confidence. And it took a great deal of time, but I have to tell you, I would not have achieved what I achieved without it. So we want to help you work very hard on that aspect of your career. So today you're going to hear from 5 women, all alums of CJC, all very successful women, and obviously very generous women to have come here today to do this. They typify confidence, but they didn't necessarily come by it naturally. And they'll share that story with you a little later. Our own Bridget Grogan is going to be introducing them and will moderate a discussion. We will have a break before then, so you'll get an opportunity to go to the restroom, get some more coffee, while they set up the stage for the panel discussion. But before that, we have a special treat, and that is a keynote presentation by another great alum of CJC, Gayle King. And you probably have read about Gayle. She was on the cover of the Alumni magazine, the issue before the one that just came out. She's been in the news a good bit lately in Gainesville. She is truly one of our college's and Gainesville's greatest success stories. So her bio is in your program, and I'm not going to go through the facts and figures about her career. Needless to say, she's had a very successful career and is now a top executive vice president, and chief administrative officer for Nationwide Insurance. Nationwide has more than 30,000 employees, and Gayle is responsible for human resources as well as other duties at Nationwide. And has this grand office. I was there late last year, this beautiful office overlooking Columbus, Ohio. It's pretty exciting to go see her in her environment and the way her employees react to her. Clearly, this is a woman of great influence. So I won't recount her bio, but there are 3 things that I want to tell you about Gayle. One is that she was raised in Gainesville by her grandmother, in an environment that didn't assume she would go to college. But that was her goal from the time she was a little girl, and I'll let her tell you her story. She earned her bachelor's degree at our college and then went on to get a master's in public administration, also here at the University of Florida, and then rose through the ranks at Nationwide. The second thing is she devotes a great deal of her time and heart to ensuring the success of others. That's why she's here today. She's here today to help ensure your success. And she's done things to help ensure my success as dean. Just yesterday, we spent a couple of hours in conversation, and she was asking me all the right questions to help me focus in on what our story is. Because storytelling is so important for us. It's one of our core competencies, but I have struggled with how to tell our story succinctly and briefly. And Gail worked with me on that. So, concerned about my success too. She's also written a book on this topic, which I hope she'll talk about, and it's going to be published later this year. And then third, she continues to give back to the place where it all started. About 2 weeks ago, about 3 decades from her graduation here, it was announced that Gail was giving $1 million to the University of Florida. And we are so great. Yes, please. So you too, at some point in your lives, can give back. You can be successful like Gail and the other women you'll hear from today and give back to your college. Not necessarily $1 million, but you can come and participate in events like this. You can share your success story with students just like you. So without further ado, I welcome with great gratitude Gail King.
Diane is a little taller than I am, so let me get this all down so that I can get all adjusted and ready to go. All right, so good morning, Gator friends. All right. I am absolutely delighted to be back in Gainesville again. I feel like I've been here quite a bit lately, but it's always nice to get back, and I was especially looking forward to coming and speaking with you this morning because I just couldn't wait to get back here. But I also have to tell you the truth. I was also looking forward to some warm weather. It has been really cold in Columbus, Ohio. I would have on a coat and boots and everything else. So it's my pleasure to be here with you and to have an opportunity to share with you. I want to do special thanks, though, to Dean McFarland for the invitation and for her incredible leadership. She is indeed a woman of influence and someone that I hope that you all take great pride in. And so I want to talk to you about why I believe that Diane is a woman of influence. And it begins with the fact that she's had an incredible career. I think you all know she was a publisher of a large newspaper for, over 13 years. The bottom line, guys, is you don't get to certain jobs without being really good at what you do. And she did a fabulous job there. And she influenced. Whenever you can speak to a community, you have an opportunity to influence how people think, and hopefully in a positive way. She's a woman of influence here at the university. I have an opportunity. I'm on the foundation board, and Diane participates in many of the meetings. And you know when someone is respected because they're listening. And when Diane speaks at our meetings, they are listening. And you should feel good about that because she's representing our college exceedingly well. But I think that beyond what we do in our own professional careers is what you do outside. And I don't know how many of you know that, Diane established a charity in Sarasota. How long has it been now? In 2000. And they make a difference with those families who are just on the edge, close to losing homes, close to being homeless. And that, in my mind, is a woman of influence. And then the final thing, that those of you who know Diane know that she recently lost her mother. But when I first met her, what I heard from her was this tremendous love and this understanding that she had to be committed to a career, but that she also had to be committed to a family. And so I think you all should help me give your dean a big round of applause for being incredible. And Diane, I really do appreciate the friendship. I'm learning a lot, and as I said, just the opportunity to come back and speak with you. I also want to recognize the ladies who you will hear from shortly. I mean, they're quite impressive, and they'll be able to tell their own stories, but give them a round of applause as well. They're going to be great. And then, but I have to do a special thanks to each of you. You all are the future, and you understand that you needed to be here. That perhaps you would hear something that will help you think about who you want to be as a leader. And you already understand that if you're going to get anything out of life, that you've got to give something out of life. And I know many of you, if you were like me, you probably wanted to sleep late this morning, right? How many of you didn't want to sleep late? All right, so I'm right? But again, you've already told the world something about you. You said, I will do what it takes to understand what I need to do to be successful. So I really, really want to applaud you for that. So what I'd like to do, though, is that I've been asked to speak about becoming a woman of influence. And indeed, this is a timely topic. I mean, I think many of you probably have read the book or have heard of the book, Sheryl Sandberg's Lean In. But it's timely not only because that book was written, it's timely because our society, our communities, corporate America, and our families need individuals who will allow their voice to be heard and who will influence change that is good change. And so, you know, my goals this morning, really, I have a few outcomes. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about me. How did a little girl from Gainesville, Florida, wind up in this place? It's really neat, and you too can do it. I want to provide us perspective on the need for strong voices and that you need to have your voice heard. I want to speak to the journey. And it was really interesting as I was preparing for this, I thought, you know, I'll share with them what I share with Nationwide Associates. But then I thought I needed to connect you all back to the journey that women have been on some 50 years, your parents. And 50 years isn't a long time. I want to provide insights. Again, today is about lessons for you. I want to provide insights on my own career and hopefully some ideas for you. And then finally, and most importantly, I want to encourage you to believe that you can become whatever in life you want to become. That you can become whatever in life you want to become. You've already started, and all you have to do is just get in the way, and it will be there for you. So now you've heard Diane speak a little bit about my bio, but what I'd like to do, and if I can figure out which way this goes, all right, I did well. All right, is to tell you a little bit more about me. So Diane mentioned that I was raised in Gainesville, Florida. So I want you to know that. I was raised on the other side of an education. It was not my reality. It was not my destiny. And many of you understand what that is. I was raised by a grandmother, born to a teenage mother, who couldn't raise me, but understood, but gave me life. And gave me this wonderful gift of my grandmother who loved me dearly. So again, it wasn't my reality, but I lived in a city that exposed me to the University of Florida. And so I began to see a different world. And I knew, and somehow I knew, that I wanted an education. And I paid, like you all are doing, I paid the price of my time and effort to attain this education. Because attaining an education is not easy. I mean, how many of you could have just, you know, it takes time, it takes effort, it takes commitment. And you forego short-term gain in the meantime. And so again, I understood that I needed to do that. I developed early on a personal brand. You know, what I know is this, is that you cannot decide how people will view you, but you can decide how you want the world to view you. And so the one thing that I never compromised was my hard work, my dedication, and my integrity. And you're going to be challenged along the way. But in every one of your jobs, like you're doing today, you give it your best. I joined a company nationwide some 32 years ago. And I was very deliberate about that. I remember interviewing for a number of jobs here on campus. And I joined a company that I knew and felt would give me opportunities to continue to grow. Now, I didn't follow my journalism degree at that time, but they had a communications department. And I thought, okay, they have opportunities. I can leverage that. And it has worked out for me. Career moves. You know, the other thing we're going to talk a lot about is that it's going to be really critical for you to be open to relocating and looking at different opportunities, understood the value of strong relationships. I've made a lot of mistakes along the way. I wish I could tell you that it's been smooth sailing, but I've made a lot of mistakes. But the one thing here that you see here is I believe that I deserved it as much as anyone else. And you have to believe that. And Diane mentioned that earlier, is that when you go into whatever environment you go into, you have to believe that you deserve it as much as the next person. Because if you believe that, you will do what it takes. And then guess what happens when you believe something about yourself? The rest of the world does. You know, so if you act like you don't belong, guess what? I'm going to act like you don't belong. If you act timid, guess what? I'm going to say, she's not comfortable. And people want to believe that you believe, you know. And so we'll talk a little bit about that. And then, again, one of the things that I understand and that you will come to understand as you continue to grow is that early on it was always about, okay, what do I want for Gail? Okay, you know, how do I get this? How do I make it to here? How do I buy myself the next new thing? But then you realize that that's nice. But what's really nice is that when you can use that to help change someone else's life. And so I'll talk about, you know, my journey that when I reached a point in my life where I was able to buy my mother and my aunt a house. You know, think about how that makes you feel. You know, because you can't buy yourself enough to satisfy just you. You know, when you feel good about yourself, you're giving back into the world. So that's a little bit about who I am. Diane talked a little bit about my job. So as I said, I joined Nationwide as a claims adjuster, entry-level claims adjuster, and moved. I've relocated 5 times with the company. I've had about 16 different jobs. I've worked for 3 different CEOs. And what I know to be true is that if you come to work every day and do your very best, it doesn't matter who you work for. If you're working for smart people, they'll want to keep you around. My portfolio includes, I have HR responsibility for all of our strategy and policies. Aviation reports up to me. All of our corporate real estate reports up to me. Security and all of our meeting planning. So I have a large portfolio, a large staff, and just having a lot of fun right now. So that's a little bit about me. But let's talk a little bit about why we are here, and which is really to talk about becoming a woman of influence. And what I thought I would do is to talk about what influence is. And I hope I have that slide up. And so when I looked at Webster, and Webster says that the influence is the capacity to have an effect on the character, development, or behavior of someone or something. And then I thought about, well, okay, so that's the definition of it. And you're here and we're talking about it. But so why is becoming a woman of influence so critical? And I thought about, it's not just because so that I can say that I'm an executive VP, or so that I can say that I'm a publisher, or I can say that I'm a vice president, and all of those things. It's not just about you. It's because if you become a person or a woman of influence, you have an opportunity to positively impact social issues, corporations, and families. It's because you get to change the world when you allow your voice to be heard. So now that we know what it will accomplish, let's talk a little bit. I thought it would be helpful to go back a little bit, and let's take you back 50 years and see where women have come from. So the journey for women, and I know that you all don't remember this, and I don't remember all of it, but some. Within the last 50 years, want ads, can you just imagine, were segregated by gender and race. So basically, they had already determined that there were jobs that you couldn't do. That just is mind-boggling to me. You know, marriage was the ticket to the life you want. I was sitting at this table and I was listening to these bright young women. I mean, you know, they have as much innovation and creativity as anyone, but the only thing that was open to them was marriage. Juries were all men. You know, you couldn't sign a lease alone. You couldn't qualify for a loan without your husband. Sexual harassment was not a crime. You know, so you had to put up with some man telling you and treating you a certain way. It was not a crime. And I can tell you at Nationwide, I mean, you are out of there if you ever sexually harass anyone. I mean, the world has totally changed. Law and medical school admissions was limited to 5% females, and I think right now it's 50%. Women who worked outside of the home in 1967 was only 29%. compared to 47% in 2012. And the buying power, that the decisions made by women was around 15%. Today it's 75% of decisions are made by women. So what do you think? We've come a long way, baby, right? Am I right? All right. I want you to see the faces, though, of this change. So 50 years ago when I was thinking about this, I said, oh, wait, let's look at the faces. So we went from men having all juries, right, being all the only ones allowed on juries to make decisions, to today we've had women who are leading, been on the highest courts in the land. We have women who are leading in the most influential, second most influential job in the land. And then you look at people like Michelle Obama and how she has recreated the role and redefined the role of First Lady. And then Nancy Pelosi. I was in D.C. on Tuesday, and she was speaking. I mean, an amazing woman. And she says that I am important and you will listen. That's called women of influence. And then you look at the University of Florida, and I've not captured all of them, but I've met some of these ladies. Our very own Dean McFarland is here. I mean, but you have women of influence here that you can rely on and look to. The other one that is really interesting, we have work to do, but today, of our Fortune 100 companies, we have 8 women. Now, years ago, we had none. Of our Fortune 500 companies, we have around 24 women. So again, a lot of work yet to do, but we have made progress. So I thought it would be helpful to sort of ground you in the journey and to ground where we've come from, show you the faces of the people who have changed, and then move into talking about, but the journey continues. And I thought this slide was really a great slide. 3/4 of a penny for your thoughts. What do you think about that? I thought that was fascinating. The journey continues because in 2015, we still have pay gaps. Women are paid, I mean, that is proven, at 80 cents on the dollar. And why are women paid 80 cents on the dollar? And I see this when we interview, because women, you know, we will, you make an offer to us, and sometimes we will just agree with that. I've rarely seen a man on the first offer agree. He wants to come back and negotiate an extra $5,000 or an extra something. We don't always ask for what we want. You know, so again, the pay gap is one that we have to continue to address. There are unconscious biases that just naturally occur. And we see it. I mean, people don't intentionally do it, but they do it. You know, we think that a man who has proven that, you know, that they're smart and talented, that they're ready for the next job. We think that a woman needs more experience, and they don't even realize that they're doing. You know, and you have to be diligent about saying, why is there a difference, and demanding it in a way that they can hear you. And this was when I was doing some research on it, was fascinating, and it doesn't impact us today, but globally, the disparity in education, that there's some, I think it's like 62 million women, not in America, who do not have access to education, and what that does to you, because education really does change your life. So again, the journey continues, and you all are in a place where you can positively impact that journey and change this for women 50 years from now. So the question is, well, how do you address the continued gap? So if there's a gap that will get in the way of your being able to be successful, how will we address it? The first thing is you're going to make decisions about where you go in terms of who you will be working for. So organizations play a critical role in that. And I can tell you at Nationwide and in most large companies, they have diversity and inclusion policies. They're focused on the fact that talent is the only game in town, and that they need to do what they can to ensure that they're getting all of these bright minds into their organization. But the other way to address those gaps begin with you. And because you're the only ones who can decide what you will and will not accept. And so it's the individual aspect of that. And I want to talk to you about some lessons, 11 in fact, lessons that I have seen work for me and worked for others. I thought this slide you would appreciate. Why don't we just skip to the end of the story, right? Let's just move to the end of the story and get to the real deal. You know, how do I climb the corporate ladder? All right? So I've talked a little bit about who I am. I've shared a little bit about the journey women have been on. I've talked about the fact that we still have, we still have work to do. And let's talk about what then you can do. So one of the things that, and you heard Diane speak about this earlier, and this is one of the most important things you can do, and that is that you have to believe in you. You have got to believe in you. You know, and because every now and again, the world will make you feel that perhaps there's someone better than you. How many of you seen people do that to you? They're better than you. But the reality is, if you don't believe in you, no one else can. Because they're too busy worrying about their own selves. So you have to believe in the power of you. You are the only person who can tell the world that you matter and that you deserve an opportunity to have every opportunity that your hard work, that your education, your commitment, and your dedication will provide. And so I want to give you just a couple of examples. So as I've shared this with Diane, I grew up here. And I grew up on, and I mean, everyone has a story. So, I'm not saying my story is better than yours or harder than yours. I don't know your story. But every one of us has a story. But what I recall is just how poor we were materially. But I was never poor mentally. And I don't know how many of you understand that difference. And so, I would look around and other people had things that I didn't have. My first phone I had was when I was 18 years old and was working. I mean, that seems really antiquated, but that's the truth. And so I had to, and I credit my grandmother for teaching me early on that what you have doesn't define you. It's who you are that defines you and what you believe about you. And, and she spoke that into me. And so what I would encourage each of you to do is to really focus on that and know that every day you're being watched, every day, and especially when you go into corporate America, in schools, wherever, is that you've got to send to the world that you're important. That not that you're more important than someone else, but that you're important. And if you're not at a place where your confidence is as strong as it needs to be, then you just got to practice it. You got to every day get up and just say, I'm going to act like today I'm Michelle Obama, or I'm Hillary Clinton, or I'm whomever. Because if you act it long enough, you'll begin to believe it. So again, I really do believe that this is the one thing that I see, and I've seen it at work, is that women just don't believe in themselves as much. And so I really want to encourage you to practice, 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 and tell the world what you want the world to believe about you. Now, if you're not confident, then you go home and you tell yourself you're not. But you tell me that you are, okay? Is that a deal? You tell the world that you're okay, and then you go home and you tell yourself something. You have to have a vision for your life. It won't be crystal clear today. I think, some of you have a vision that, maybe I want to be a publisher, maybe I want to do this or that. What you have to know is that it will change. And many of you I want to have a job, I want to begin to get some experiences. But what you want to do is to have a vision about, okay, if I do this. So what we know is this, is that if you work hard, that if you get in the way of successes, if you develop a great brand, that experiences will come to you. And then suddenly you will begin to see what it is you want to do. So the key for you is to have a vision that I want to contribute. Every day I want to do more than what I've done. And then you get in the way of that. And then you'll begin to see that opportunities will just open themselves up to you. As I said, I was here in Gainesville, Florida, working over there at the Nationwide Insurance Office, and was working in claims, started out investigating automobile claims, and had some leaders just say, we see something in her. This is the power of mentors and sponsors, and came to me and asked me to take on a new assignment. So again, I wasn't sure about what was next, but all I knew is that if I did what I was doing at the moment really, really well, that everything else would work out. And that has never failed me. So at every stage of your career, just make sure that you're evaluating where you're at, what are you doing, and how can you continue to grow. The other insight is really around 4 Ps. Have a passion for what you're doing. The reality is that if you don't like it, you won't do it really well. So you'll get tired. So the 4 Ps are passion, have purpose. Why are you doing it? Know why you're doing it. Preparation, you all are preparing now. You're going to have to continue to be prepared so that you can Be ready for whatever comes your way. And then patience. Now, how many of you are very patient people? Raise your hand. I know you all are here. None, right? So, so you're going to have to also practice that patience when you enter corporate America. Not to wait a long time, but you have to be ready and able to sit and watch and wait until the right time and know when the time is right to strike. So you've got to follow your passions. You've got to figure out what it is you love, who you really are. You got to have the courage to do that. And then, again, watch everything come into fruition for you. This one is one that I see often with young people, well, with old people too. 3 C's. You've got to have strong communication skills. And so you all are in communication, so you understand that. Every decision that is made when people are able to communicate the value of that decision. So strong communication skills will be critical to your success. Collaboration skills will be critical to your success. If you don't learn to collaborate early, you will lose. Because at the end of the day, there will be people who will be waiting to get you. You know, because at some point, how many of you are going to support people who never listen to you? Raise your hand. Anybody? Right. So you've got to develop that collaboration skill, those collaboration skills, so that you can find the right solution. We see watching on television what's happening in our Congress, because I'm here and you're there and we can't figure out how to find the middle. And the middle is where we all need to be, because that's where the answer is. Attitude and optimism. You know, this is one that is so important. How many of you hang out with people that don't make you feel good? How many? How many of you hang out with people that's not friendly to you? Not many. And if you do it, it's just because. And what I would say to you is that when you come to work, leaders are looking for people who are bringing a positive attitude into the work environment. You know, are you positive? Are you optimistic? Are you helping me solve problems versus are you looking for problems? So again, attitude and optimism, because we talk about you. Remember what I said, you're always being watched? You're always being watched. And so the question for you is, you know, what are they saying about you? Are they saying, wow, I want her on my team? You know, she's bright and she's always positive and she gets stuff done. Or will they say, you know what, I'm not sure what mood she's in today. You know, I don't know. You know, last week she spoke, today she didn't. Am I right? So I want you to think about, what is it that you want the world to say about you? And when you're in an environment, or whether you're here or wherever you're at, what do you want them to say about you? I can't tell you how many times we have meetings, and we have different ARG groups, associate resource groups, and young people will come in late to the meeting, and we smile at them. And when they leave, we go, okay. Yep. You really do care about your job. You are always being watched. Always. Remember that. You're always being watched. And you want to tell the world what you want them to know about you, right? Hard work with impact. You know, you can't just do work and just say, you know, what do you want me to do? You've got to be looking at, how can I make my leader, the team I'm working with, better? So that's hard work with impact. Anybody can just deliver what I tell them to do. Can you go get that from me? Can you go do that? But are you being creative? Are you getting ahead of it? Are you being proactive? How are you helping me? In our company, we have a 5-point rating scale. And our associates are always like, well, I'm a 4. So 3 is good and a 4 is, you know. And we're like, okay, so tell me, what did you do that took you from just delivering what we asked you to do to helping us think beyond what we asked you to do? So leaders are looking for people who are coming in, who are positive and energetic about helping them be successful. You know, you want people who will make a difference. One of the things I tell my team, they will laugh and they go, you know, Gail likes Rocky better than she likes that person. Or Gail likes Benita better than she likes this person. And I tell them, I said, well, you two can be my favorite. You two can be my favorite. All you got to do is do your job. And, you know, I never have to worry that Rocky's not thinking about what we need to do. I never have to worry that Benita is not on top of whatever I've given her. She's always bringing ideas into me. So if you want to be somebody's favorite, guess what? What do? You become indispensable to them, you know? So if they are going, I don't ever have to think about it, I will never get rid of you if I never have to think about it. You know, so how do you add value? And that's why I'm saying it's hard work, adding value with impact. Now, this is one that destroys careers. It makes careers and it destroys careers. Relationships. So relationships matter. How many of you believe that? Okay. They matter. They matter. Because at the end of the day, we're all human beings. And we respond to people according to how they make us feel. How many of you respond to people according to how? I want you to remember that when you're in the workplace, people are going to be responding to you in terms of how you make them feel. If you make me feel that I'm not as important as you, I may have no power and I may not be able to do anything to hurt you, but I'll never help you. You know, I'll never help you. So you need to make sure that your relationships are critical because it will hurt you if you don't. And then the thing that you, especially starting out in your career, I think about the people who we were claims people together, and then they became my boss. You know, so, you know, you need to pay attention to your friends. And you never know. And the other thing that happens in large corporations and in any corporation, you never know who's friends with somebody else. You know, it's like, oh, my God, I've made you an enemy, and that's your cousin, and that's your brother, you know. So I really want you to every day, I'm back to what I've said, is that you need to every day think about what is the message you want the world to know about you? And how do you want them to feel about you, right? And that if you manage those relationships, then you will find that things happen because all of us talk to people, right? We all talk to people, and that helps you. So from time to time, I'll get young people who we have formal mentoring programs at Nationwide that we assign every year because we want people to have that opportunity. But I tell people they'll always want me to be their mentor, as if to say, you know, and I think that's great, and we have those. But what I say to them is pay attention to who I'm listening to. So I'm going to tell you this. When you go into an organization, instead of worrying about whether or not you can have Diane as your mentor, pay attention to who Diane listens to. Pay attention to who your boss hangs out with. Because guess what? If I have a job that I'm getting ready to staff, I'm going to ask the person that you're closest to. I'm going to ask somebody probably a level in the organization that you wouldn't even think about. So but that's a way to increase your influence by just paying attention to who does that person listen to? Who does that person hang out with? How can they help me be more successful? Your networks will be critically important. They increase your ability to continue to grow. And so you need to have strong networks in your office. You need to have strong networks outside of your office. Getting involved in the community. And when you start a job, make sure that you're doing more than just your job. At every company, there's something that they are passionate about. If the company has decided that something is passionate to them, it should be passionate to you too. You know, or at least that you're involved in, because what that tells me is that you're engaged in what I'm engaged in, that what matters to me matters to you. So again, relationships and networks are really important. They will help you when the sun is shining, and they come in handy when it's not. And in a career, sometimes the sun won't be shining, and you'll need those relationships and those networks to help you move along. This is another one that I hope I'm not doing something with. Did it move to self-aware? All right, I've done something. There's a screen up here that I'm not doing, and I must tell y'all, I'm not very good at this. Thank you. It's stuck. But let's talk about self-aware and adaptable. It's this. Thank you. And say hi.
Oh, that.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. So self-aware and adaptable. So this is about feedback and continuous development. So one of the things that will happen when you start in a new job is that you'll go in and you'll give your very best, and then you'll have a boss tell you, you know what, you didn't do that so well. How many of you have ever had that happen? Yeah. And you'll have somebody give you some feedback, and you'll go, well, I don't want that feedback. I just told you to have a lot of self-confidence, right? but that doesn't mean you can't listen. So, you have to have self-aware, and you have to be adaptable. And so I would just encourage you to always be open to feedback, because what that says is that I can hear you. Now, you can critique that feedback. You need to not just assume that all that feedback is right, but you need to know the feedback, and you need to thank them for it. I can't tell you how many. We have a young lady who had applied for a senior VP role, didn't get the role. And she handled that with such grace. She didn't get the job. She probably should have. She didn't get it the first time. She handled it with such grace in terms of talking with the leaders and saying, tell me a little bit about what you wanted to see more of. Tell me a little bit about what else I can do. That a year later, when that job came open, guess what? She got it. Now, I can tell you on the flip side, I've seen lots of people who didn't get the job, and guess what they throw? A temper tantrum. They get all nasty and all mad as if that's going to change it. So if remember, it's how you treat me. So if you come to me in a positive way, then I'm going to be more inclined to see, what did I miss? So, two scenarios, and it happens all the time. So you've got to always be managing that and being self-aware. You have to know your strengths. It's really important to know what you're good at. But it is equally important that you know what you need to work on. Because if you know what you need to work on, then you have power over your brand. If you can't hear how the world sees you, then you don't have power. They have power. Because even if you tell me that you don't want to hear me, and I'm the person in power, then it doesn't really matter. Because behind your back, when there's a decision being made, I'm going to say, she doesn't listen. She doesn't see herself the way we see her. She needs more time in the job. So being open allows people to tell you the truth, and it gives you an opportunity to decide, whether or not you want to adjust it or not. I've seen the relationships destroy careers. I've seen that lack of self-awareness destroy careers. So make sure you're paying attention to this. This other one is around understanding the culture and the politics. The reality is, no matter where you are at, whether you're in a school environment, whether you're at a company, whether you're at church, wherever you're at, there's a culture and there are politics. And you have to be able to read it, and you have to understand it, and you have to know whether or not that's a culture that works for you. So if you work in a culture where, the people are very cutthroat, you don't want to be there. But if you want to work, so make sure you pay attention to the culture and the politics. And one way to understand the politics is to do more listening than talking. So listen, because if you listen, you can see who's aligned. You can see where the pitfalls are. So that's a really critical one. And then finally, we talk a little bit about values and integrity. That's just assume. Because once you prove that you have no integrity, then guess what? I won't trust you. And you can't influence me. So, and always know, again, I'm back to that, people are always listening to you. So know that people are listening. And so, and all of us have people that we talk about and we discuss, but in a work environment, don't do it. Go home and talk about the person. Go call your cousin or somebody. But don't bring it into the workplace, because there are no secrets. There are no secrets. And again, you're trying to influence people, and you influence people when they trust you. If they don't trust you, you can't influence them. And then finally, I think to pay it forward. That I hope that, and it sounds like I heard some of you talk about some of the volunteerism that you're doing currently. I would encourage you to pay it forward. Because again, that's what makes a life full, is that you use your life and you use your resources for good. So I've talked to you about the things that I think would be really critical. I hope some of it will stand out for you and that you'll consider it as you go into your workplaces. But I do want to acknowledge the realities of what you're going to be facing. And the realities are that you're going to work in an environment from time to time and with people you don't feel comfortable with. You're going to work with people who won't always support you. And you're going to have some bad days. Those are realities. But that's life. And, and what you have to do is to just make sure that you manage through those realities and continue to be your best self and to continue to do what you think is right for your brand and for your company or for whatever it is that you're trying to do. So I started the presentation talking about what do you get for becoming a woman of influence. And I want to just end with what you get. And that is that you get to change the world in a positive way for yourself, your families, and your communities. And, you know, what I hope that you will do is that you'll enjoy your journey and that you'll be as successful as you want to be, and that you will change the lives of family members, and you'll change the corporations and community that you will join. Thanks again. Go make a difference. All right. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks again, Gail. You are truly wise and wonderful, and we really appreciate the time you took to share your story with everybody here. We are going to take a short break, so if you would, please be back at 10 till for our panel discussion. Bridget Grogan will lead that discussion, and then we will roll right into building your personal brand with Professor Kay Tappan. So thank you.